I'm sure you have met a lot of entitled, stupid people in your life before. My sister-in-law Annie is the most entitled and selfish person I know. She is my husband, Philip's younger sister, who was born with a silver spoon in her mouth. Because she is the youngest member of their family, she has been spoiled beyond belief. After growing up, Philip had tried to tell his parents that they needed to tone down their coddling of Annie, but they just couldn't stop. So Annie became a sheltered woman who ended up being our problem when she went to college. Philip and I were married by the time Annie went off to college. We were living in a rented apartment that was spacious enough for us to host Annie. Since Annie considered herself too good for the dorms, she ended up coming to stay with us. Now, look, she wasn't a brat or anything, and actually, we got along pretty decently. However, she did change a lot after her boyfriend Tom came into the picture. Ever since then, Annie had become horrible and especially nasty to me. She had this notion that I was mooching off of his brother. She always said, "Don't you ever feel useless just sitting around and living off my brother?" I don't know what you're talking about, Annie. I'm not completely dependent on your brother. I have my own job and contribute to this household too. I doubt you make much money sitting at home and being lazy. You would be better off living somewhere else and actually getting a job that would support your lifestyle. If my brother kicks you out, you will have nowhere to go, you know. I was well within my rights to scream and yell at Annie. However, I'm someone who tends to avoid conflict. Annie made a lot of comments like these, calling me useless among other things, but I ignored her and went about my way. I chalked it up to her being ignorant and stupid. Besides, Philip always scolded her whenever he overheard her speaking trash about me. Together, the three of us had a pretty decent life until Philip got a surprise promotion. The problem was that now he had to move to another country for his new position. After discussing it, we decided that the move would be good for us. So my husband moved away and I stayed behind with Annie to wrap things up for the big move abroad. Annie had become troublesome after Philip left, but it wasn't something that I couldn't handle. But what I had never expected her to do is come to me with this demand. "I needed to talk to you about something, Rose." "Sure, what is it, Annie?" "My boyfriend and I have decided to move in together. We have been apart for a year, and now we finally feel confident enough to start living together." "Oh, don't you think it's a bit early? Also, it will be difficult for you to afford a place on your own since you two don't work." "Why would that be a problem? I already have a place to stay." I didn't like the direction in which the conversation was going. Annie deciding to move in with Tom was a red flag in itself. However, when she mentioned our apartment, I was immediately alarmed. I was desperately praying to God that she wasn't suggesting that Tom move in here. I didn't know why, but I felt like that was exactly what Annie was there to tell me. I still couldn't just accuse Annie of stuff she didn't say, so I treated it cautiously and said, "Yes, you do have a place to stay, but you and Tom will need your own place if you want to move in together." "Why would we need another place? Tom will just move in here and stay with me at this apartment." "I don't think that's a good idea, Annie. I'm sorry, but I can't allow that." "Excuse me? Who are you to allow or not allow my boyfriend to move in?" "I am the one who's in charge here, Annie. You live under my care. Besides, you don't contribute to this apartment, so you can't just bring in whoever you want. My brother brought me to this apartment, so I get a say in who comes and lives here too." "No can do, Annie. I will not allow your boyfriend to live here. You two are welcome to find another place, but he won't be staying here. If you have a problem, you can take it up with your brother." Annie and I argued for some more time before she walked away in a huff. I was pretty sure that she had called my husband straight away. I didn't have to guess what Philip was telling her. There was no way he would allow this to happen, especially when I had vetoed it. But Annie may have thought that she had a chance if she talked to her brother. When she came out of her room for breakfast the next day, her face gave away what Philip had told her. Annie was sulking and didn't even answer me when I greeted her. She refused to talk to me for days and only came out of her room to eat. I even tried to cheer her up by ordering her favorite food and stuff. Still, Annie refused to acknowledge me and sulked for 2 weeks. I felt slightly bad for her, but I shouldn't have, because all of this while she was just plotting with her boyfriend about how they would deal with me. Now, I mostly work from home, but sometimes I go to the office to sort out some stuff when people are on leave. One day, I went to the office for some work, and when I returned, I found a shocking surprise waiting for me. I came home from work and found my stuff out in the front lawn. I asked the apartment security person about what was going on. He told me that Annie and a man had brought my stuff down from the apartment. And when he asked what they were doing, they simply ignored him and left. Hearing this, I was extremely surprised and confused about the situation. So I immediately went to my apartment to see what was going on. I knocked on the door and found Annie along with her boyfriend Tom on the other side of the door. Tom and I had met twice, and both those encounters left a sour taste in my mouth. Philip and I didn't think that Tom was a good guy, and we had doubts that he was using Annie in some way. So I wasn't too thrilled to see him in my apartment, especially after knowing that he had touched my stuff and put it outside. I looked at them and said, "What is going on here? Why is my stuff out on the lawn?" "Why do you think your stuff is out, Rose?" "I'm sorry, Tom, but I think this conversation is between me and Annie, and I don't know why you are butting in. Oh, my boyfriend can join this conversation if he pleases too. You are no one to tell him otherwise." "What is happening here, Rose? You need to tell me why you and your boyfriend put my stuff out on the front lawn. Did I upset you or something?" "Your stuff is out on the front lawn because you won't be living in this apartment anymore." So I had speculated that Annie was mad at me and did something stupid. She might be 20, but she did have a habit of acting like an immature teenager. I didn't put it past her to act like one and throw my stuff out. Right until I talked to Annie, I had no clue that she was trying to kick me out of the apartment. That's why her words were nothing but shocking to me. Annie and Tom must have seen the shock and confusion on my face, because they smirked at me in return. I collected my thoughts and said, "I don't think I heard you correctly, Annie. Did you say that I won't be living in this apartment anymore?" "Yes, that's what I said, Rose." "Wow, you are also deaf besides being useless. Now, I already told you what is going on, so you can just take your stuff and leave." "Excuse me? I don't know what you're talking about, but I am not going anywhere. This is my apartment and I live here." "Since you are so slow, let me help you understand something, Rose. We are kicking you out and you cannot stay in this apartment anymore. Also, this is not your apartment, it's ours." Tom confidently said those words as if he had complete ownership of the place along with Annie. In reality, he was in no place to tell me whether or not I could stay at my own apartment. Everything was so bizarre that it made my head spin. I said, "I don't see how this is your apartment, Tom. So you can't just make decisions for me here." "You are wrong about that, Rose. This is his apartment now. He gets a say in who stays here." "What has gotten into you, Annie? This is my apartment, and you can't just move your boyfriend in on a whim." "Stop being such a whining witch, Rose. I live here, so I can do whatever I want. My brother pays for this apartment, so you don't get to make any decisions about it. My boyfriend will be moving in with me from today." "You were saying that you want to kick me out because your boyfriend's moving in? Even if I ignore everything else you said, tell me how Tom moving in is related to me getting kicked out." We have no space for useless people like you, so you need to leave and find a place for yourself. So that's what this was all about. Annie and Tom had planned to kick me out and take the apartment for themselves. Since I vetoed Annie in moving her boyfriend in, they decided to just ambush me and throw me out. Tom and Annie had come up with this plan to empty my stuff out on the street while I was away. It was all planned so that they could take over my apartment. I was too stunned to say anything back. I just stood there with a bewildered expression on my face while they kept talking. I have been dying to be alone with my boyfriend. I'm already 20, and it's a shame I have to share an apartment with someone who sits on her butt all day and pretends to work. You made the right call in kicking Rose out, Annie. She would have never let you live with me. Now we have the whole apartment to ourselves, and we won't even have to share. Yes, that's right, Tom. I'm so glad you came up with this brilliant idea. I'm sure we will have a good time living here till we finish our final semester and get jobs. You know what, Annie? Let's just take over the master bedroom as well. When your brother comes back, he'll just stay with your stupid sister-in-law anyway. Since the apartment is all ours now, we can do whatever you want. We will make this place our own. I was stunned to hear all the plans Annie and Tom had made together. It was clear from this conversation that Tom was the one who came up with this plan. Annie, being the stupid and entitled girl she is, accepted her boyfriend's ridiculous plan. She kicked out her own sister-in-law from the apartment because she wanted to live with her boyfriend there. Annie's action just baffled me completely. Annie did come up with a good plan, but there was one problem with it. She was of the opinion that the apartment was paid for by her brother. But that was not true at all. The apartment was, in fact, paid for by me. Before Philip left, we had a discussion about our finances and what to do about the apartment. Since I was staying back with Annie for a while, I decided to take over the rent of the apartment. Philip would cover the rent in his new country till I got there and joined him. By the time he would have been settled there, Annie would be done with college since her last semester was within 2 months. After she graduated, I would end our lease and move. That was the plan until Annie decided that she was too good to stay with a useless woman like me. I knew that yelling at Annie or making a scene wasn't going to help me, so I said, "You are making a mistake, Annie. This is my apartment. You can't just throw me out if you want. Tell Tom to leave and help me put my stuff back in." "Oh no, I'm not going to do that. Tom is staying here and you are leaving." "Don't be so childish, Annie. Your plan is stupid and senseless. Just tell Tom to leave and I will forget this even happened." "I'm not going anywhere. I'm here to stay and I won't let you bully Annie into doing something she doesn't want. By the way, I changed the locks on the door so that you can't force your way in." "You need to leave and find another place to stay, Rose. You won't be living here and I won't allow you back in. You can take your useless self and find another place to stay." After saying this, Annie simply shut the door in my face. I banged on the door to make her open it, but she ignored me completely. I tested my keys in the lock and saw that Tom had indeed changed the locks. There was no way I could get in. Annie and Tom were good planners and took care of all the details, so there was nothing much I could do. Now, I could have called my husband and made him deal with this, but I didn't do that. What I did do was call a friend who came to pick me up and take me to her place. She owned her own house and had a lot of space since she lived alone. So she came by, and with the help of the security guard, we loaded all my clothes and stuff into her truck. Yes, my friend owns a truck, because she actually owns a restaurant and needs it for carrying supplies. It was because of her that I was able to find a quick solution to my problem. I waited until midnight to call my husband because in his country it was night when it happened. I didn't want to disturb his sleep after a hectic day, so I made my own arrangements and waited till he was up. As usual, Philip called me after waking up and said, "Hey, Rose, is everything okay there?" "Actually, no, Philip. Something happened today that we need to talk about. Tell me and we will figure out something. Your sister has very unceremoniously kicked me out of the apartment. What? What are you talking about? Philip was as shocked as I was. The poor man had just woken up and was hit with rather shocking news. What Annie did was so out of the blue that anyone would have been surprised. We didn't see this coming at all. Philip was in disbelief and had a hard time wrapping his head around what I said. So I decided to explain the situation to him in detail. I told my husband the whole story and then waited for his reaction. He was rightfully furious and ready to scream at Annie for what she did. He said, "I cannot believe my stupid sister would do something like this. I knew she was a spoiled little girl, but this boyfriend of hers has made her even worse." I agree with you, Philip. No wonder we always thought that the guy was bad news. Looks like we were right. My sister has crossed all limits today and I have no patience left for her anymore. We tried so hard to help her, and in return, she ended up doing this. She did dislike me a little, although I don't know why. I guess she really didn't like the fact that I work from home and earn less than you. Lord knows what her problem is. I don't care what her problem is, Rose. What I do care about is the fact that she dared to mess with you. Don't worry, I will give her a call right now and set her straight. My husband was willing to call Annie right then and tell her everything. He was raging mad, and I knew she wouldn't think twice before screaming the life out of Annie. But I didn't feel like it was something I wanted. Instead, I said, "Actually, I don't want you to do that, Philip. Annie is on a high from the power play and thinks what she did was glorious. Let's just let her enjoy that for a while." "But why would we do that?" "It's almost at the end of the month, Philip. Soon enough, she will find out about rent and bills not getting paid. Then she will call you for help." "I see what you're thinking about, Rose. That's a good idea. I'll be stopping all payments to her from next month. So she will be forced to call me and confess everything. Then I will tell her exactly how much of a messed up situation she was in." My husband caught on to the plan I was thinking about. After that day, my husband and I decided that neither of us was going to support Annie or take any of her responsibility anymore. She could fend for herself for all we cared. So we went along with this plan and waited for Annie to come crying when reality hit her. We were already near the end of the month, so I knew it wouldn't be long before she came crying. And when she would come crying, I would show her just how badly she had messed up. About a week later, I got a call from Annie. I was waiting for her to call because I knew she wasn't going to find a way to pay rent for the apartment. Philip had made it clear that he wasn't going to support her financially anymore, so I was literally her only option. A lot of people in my place would have been super angry at Annie and not picked up her call at all. But I did answer her call because I wanted to hear the desperation in her voice as she begged me to come back. Just like I imagined, Annie said in a nervous voice, "Please come back home, Rose. I made a mistake in kicking you out. I'm very sorry." "What's the matter, Annie? Did you finally realize what a horrible person you have been? Or did something else happen, Annie?" "Look, I know I messed up, but I'm apologizing to you and begging you to come back." I don't know, Annie. I don't really feel like it. If you don't come, I'll end up getting evicted, Rose. I cannot afford the rent here, and Philip said that he will not give me money anymore." So Annie finally realized that her brother wasn't going to fund her little apartment anymore. She was now panicking because she definitely couldn't afford rent with that little minimum wage job she had. Annie then realized that calling me would be the best option. I actually patted myself on the back for not giving away my new address to her. God knows she would have shown up demanding something. Since I was on a phone call, I was able to have a lot of fun from making Annie panic and freak out. However, my little revenge was just beginning. I said, "And How do you think I can help you with this, Annie? I know that you've been paying the rent for the apartment all these months. I had no idea about it, but Philip told me everything. And how does that change anything, Annie? I don't live there anymore, so I don't see why or how I can help. You can move back in, Rose. We can just live together like we did in the past. If you move back in, I'm sure that Philip will forgive me as well. I think you said something about the apartment being too crowded. Oh, it's okay, Rose. We will adjust. It won't be a big deal if you feel uncomfortable. I can ask Tom to sleep on the couch. Thanks for the offer, Annie, but I think I will pass. I could imagine Annie's face when I told her that I wouldn't be coming back to the apartment. That stupid woman had thought that she would just ask me to come back and I would readily agree, that I would forget what she said and did to me and come to her aid now that she couldn't afford rent anymore. It was just hilarious, but the audacity made me a bit mad. Annie, on the other hand, was fully in panic mode and frantically said, "What? No, don't say that, Rose. You absolutely need to come back. I'm begging you, Rose." I don't see why I need to come back, Annie. You not being able to pay the rent is not my problem. As far as I'm concerned, I've been unceremoniously kicked out of the apartment and told not to return. I'm sorry for that, Rose. I wasn't thinking straight. Tom really wanted to stay with me, and this was the only way for us. I really didn't have another option. You could have done a lot of things, but decided to kick me out instead. You didn't even give me a warning. You just went ahead and threw me out like trash. Do you think I would forget that? I really didn't want to do it, Rose. I'm telling you, I had no other option. I'm sorry, Rose. Please, just come back. If you don't come back, I won't be able to live here anymore, Rose. That's not how it works, Annie. If I come back to the apartment, you will have to move out, because I will not live with you again. I had literally made up my mind never to live with Annie or allow her to take advantage of me again. I did that once, and the outcome is right before your eyes, my friends. You know what she did to me. I bet none of you will agree that I should help her out despite her antics. She was a grown woman and not an underage teenager who didn't know any better. Her entitlement and greed really repelled me, and I didn't want to be around her again. Annie was having a hard time accepting that. Actually, I think she was in denial because she thought of her having no home very soon was too much to handle. She didn't have a second plan at all. It was clear that she had really expected me to give in and come back to the apartment. She said, "I know you're mad at me, Rose, but please, let's not hold a grudge. I already apologized for what I did. We are family, so there's no point in being mad at me." You are wrong about that, Annie. I don't give any family member a free pass to be an absolute witch. I can be generous, but I draw the line when I get disrespected. And believe me, Annie, you and your boyfriend disrespected me more than anyone else in this world. I don't know, Rose. I really didn't know that you were the one paying rent for the apartment. I thought it was my brother who was paying for it. If you had known, you wouldn't have kicked me out, right? You know what, Annie? I think it was better this way. I got to know your real face so that I would never waste my time and money on you again. The apartment is your problem now. You wanted to stay with your boyfriend. You two can figure it out yourselves. Annie started to cry when I made myself clear to her. She was desperate for help and knew that she had fallen into the hole that she dug for herself. She thought that she was doing something clever by removing me from the apartment and allowing her useless boyfriend to move in. I don't know how she thought she could convince her brother, though. Maybe she had planned to cry her eyes out or beg till he gave in. Philip always held a soft spot for her, but I doubt that would have worked. Anyway, the thing was that now that she was completely at my mercy, she cried and said, "Please, Rose, just help me out this once. I can't take up more jobs because I have my semester exams coming. Tom doesn't work and doesn't want to either. I really can't afford to pay for this apartment. That's too bad, Annie. You should have thought about those things before doing something so stupid. You are on your own now. No, please, Rose, help me out this once. I will never ask you for anything again. I'll even make Tom leave the apartment if you want. Please come back and help me. I don't want to be homeless. That sounds like a you problem, Annie. I did all I could for you. I will not help you ever again in this lifetime. What I can do is wish you luck, since it looks like you will need it. Goodbye, Annie. I hope you don't end up on the streets. Annie was crying and trying to talk to me, but I straight away hung up on her. I had no interest in continuing to speak to her after what she did to me. I am not someone who tolerates disrespect, and Annie went beyond any limits of that, just because she realized I was her only ticket to avoid homelessness. I wasn't going to go along with whatever plan she had in mind now. She could take her boyfriend and live in a car or something. I wasn't going to take her responsibility anymore. For the next few days, Annie tried to contact me and beg me for forgiveness. She had no way of knowing my address, or else I'm pretty sure she would have ended up on my doorstep. I worked from home, so there wasn't a way that she could ambush me at work either. However, she did call and texted me from several different numbers to try and beg for help. I continued to block all those numbers because I didn't want to be disturbed every day for something I wasn't willing to do. Philip's parents did call me and apologized on Annie's behalf, but they wanted me to move back in with her because Annie simply couldn't afford rent. I had a good laugh at their ridiculous expectation and told them that it would never happen. They were a little disappointed, but didn't press the issue further. They knew very well that I wasn't someone who could be swayed that easily. Annie and my in-laws also tried to make Philip pay Annie's rent, and he had a very similar reaction to me. He laughed at them and told them that it would never happen. Since everything happened, I have moved in with Philip abroad. My work is remote, so relocating wasn't an issue at all. Now that I didn't have Annie's responsibility, I managed to shift my life completely to Philip's country. Annie threw a tantrum and wanted me to stay with her, of course, but I ignored her as usual. I had already ended the lease on the apartment and told my landlord that I wasn't going to pay for Annie anymore. Annie was then forced to move out and crash on a friend's couch to complete her semester. As for Tom, well, he broke up with Annie once he realized that Annie wasn't going to provide him with free housing. Annie literally lost half her family because of that idiot who was only out to use her. I would say that it serves her right, but sometimes I do feel a little bad for her. I hope she learns her lesson and never tries to do something like this again. Philip and I are still keeping our distance and don't know what to do about Annie. For now, we are lucky to stay away from all that drama and enjoy our life in the new country